Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome back to the Disclosure Team YouTube channel. This is an interview I've been looking forward to for quite some time, and it's finally happening tonight. Good to see you guys in the comments. We've already been having a laugh behind the scenes. Good to see you, Jason, and yeah, good to see you all. But listen, let's not mess around. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce to you Mr. Jeremy McGowan. Jeremy.
Vinnie.
How are you, man?
I am doing well, my friend. It is an honor and a pleasure to be here. I really appreciate any chance I get to talk to the folks across the pond. And like I was saying in the chat, apparently today I'm the guy with the funny accent. So I guess most of your viewers are over in the UK. So
do you know what? I think they're actually mainly in the US, to be honest.
Really?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. I never planned it that way. Obviously, they just appear from everywhere. But no, yeah. Do you know what? Shout out to everyone that's here, whether you're from any corner of the globe. You're all welcome. So, and we've got Mr. Jason Turner, or has he gone to finish doing his decking?
He's pressure washing his deck.
So, yeah. So, Jeremy, how's your day going so far, man?
It's doing well, man. It's about 11:30 over here in Vegas. I woke up this morning. I got a chance to cook some breakfast for the family, then go outside and mow my lawn and check out the landmines that my dog left for me, and come take a shower. And now I'm sitting here talking to you fine folks. So it's going well today.
Sounds good, man. I've just noticed on your cupboard in the background, you got the sticker, the O.S.I.R.I.S sticker.
Yeah, right there. There you go. Yeah, there you got one. And of course, I've got one on the back of the O.S.I.R.I.S as well. And of course, the logo is emblazoned on the side of the doors there as well. Dan Zetterman, man, he knocked that out of the park. And if you knew the amount of detail and the synchronicities that lined up when he was doing that, right down to the star field, that is all the stars that you can see in that is the actual position of the stars over Dan's house at the minute he finished making the logo.
Yeah, incredible. We had a conversation about it on Instagram Live a couple of months ago, and he went in and told me everything about it, and I was just blown away.
Yeah. And that's not the only synchronicity that happened during the course of the making of that. It was incredible how everything lined up.
Yeah, amazing stuff. So where do we start? I mean, I guess at the start, just give us a bit of your background. You can go back as far as you want, and before you're interested in UAP, anything you want, but yeah, I'll leave it up to you, my man.
Oh, man. Well, obviously, I'm a child of the 70s. I am 50 years old just as of recently. So this obviously takes a lot of work because it doesn't look like this, man.
Looking good, bro. I would not have put you at 50, so congratulations.
I appreciate it. No, man, I don't even know where to start. Talking about myself is one thing. Talking about the experiences and things like that is a lot easier. But I guess, I ended up in the military at a fairly normal age. I didn't go in super early. I didn't go in super late. I turned 21 in basic training.
Right.
So it was the worst birthday I'd ever had in my life. My drill sergeant comes up to me, hands me a beer, tells me I can open it, says happy birthday, then has me hand it back to him, and he drinks it in front of me. So that was my birthday. Yeah, Gary.
Shout out Gary, boys, in the house.
Gary.
We'll be speaking in a few days, Gary, and
yeah,
it'll be your turn.
You better trim your beard, Gary, when you come on, so they can actually see if you're talking or if you're just a puppet with somebody's hand up your.
Oh, I love the banter already. Love it. So yeah, sorry to be interrupted there.
No worries. That's Gary. That's what he does. Yeah. No, I ended up in the Air Force, and I would have been a career military guy, but I guess the medium version of the story is right after I got to my first duty station, which was Pope Air Force Base. I served there technically from 90 to 95, basically, and of course I was only on the base for maybe 6 to 8 months in total out of the entire 4.5 years that I was on station at Pope, because we were the most highly deployed base in the U.S. military at the time. Because Pope is now gone. It's now part of Fort Bragg. It's called Pope Field. But when I was there, we had, of course, the 101st Airborne, the 82nd Airborne at Fort Bragg. We had the Green Beret training facility. We had Delta Force. We had JSOC. We had all
Wow.
the Special Forces operators. The Frog School was there for the SEALs. So
Wow.
basically, anybody that was anybody went through that general area. So
Sure.
all the special guys, had all the special jobs and all the special duties. So I was not special. My unit was attached to JSOC, Joint Special Operations Command,
Yeah.
but only as a support operations. We didn't go in and do the heavy lifting. We went in and lifted their heavy equipment.
Okay.
And wherever they went, we would go as support operators for them, just making sure that their stuff was safe and secure, and their runways were clear, and the AZ that we were, or the LZ that we were around, was free of enemy fires, to make sure that when the spec ops guys came in, they had a secure place to bunk down.
Right.
And that was basically to my operation there. But so I ended up spending about 2.5 years in total in the Middle East, in the first 4 years of my military service, which I don't like that place much at all.
Right.
But Pope was an interesting place because it's kind of an indoctrination by fire. I think
Right.
in the first 4 years of my service, I had been to 22 different countries. By the end of the first, yeah, by the end of the
Wow.
fourth year, it was incredible. But I Pope was unique in the fact that I got to see a lot of things, and got to go to a lot of places that I never would have had the opportunity
Of
to do
course.
before. So I don't even know where I was going with this, but
Bro, I'm blown away just by the fact that you joined, and you're just one of the most deployed groups in the whole of the Air Force and stuff, and you got to see all these countries. Do you feel like it toughened you up as well, doing all that stuff so quickly and going to different places?
well,
And
I'm gonna beat Gary to the punch and say no, because he's gonna call me Chair Force in probably about 3 seconds. But I don't know that it toughened me up or anything. It opened my eyes a lot. I mean,
okay, yeah,
I grew up in a very rural, very redneck area in West Virginia. I mean, this is
right,
the heart of Appalachia, where it's nothing but coal miners and oil rigs, and things like that over there. So it was a very, very closed society that I grew up in. So when I got into the military, it really exposed me to a completely different universe on
yeah.
day one. I mean, there was 2 black people in my school, in my high school, and they were half white, and they were brothers. And that was the only exposure I had, because
Yeah,
there was one high school in the entire county. So we only had 1,500 kids. There you go, Gary. We
just
only
a
had
quick
50.
shout out to Gary for the $20. Thank you so much, man. I appreciate it. And yeah, Jeremy, you got it there. He called you out. Sorry to
Yeah,
interrupt. Yeah, sorry,
that's all
you were
right.
saying about your high school.
That's all right. Do you know why the Navy exists, right? It's because the Marines need somebody to dance with. So, Gary.
Yeah, come on. This is just going to go back and forth now. I love it. I love it. This is great.
But going into the military, it really opened my eyes to new cultures and new experiences, and different types of people that I had never been exposed to before. And it was pretty entertaining, and awkward, and amazing all at the same time.
Was it? And what percentage of those deployments across all those different countries were like really intense? Like war situations, or was it more on a different level?
It started off with Desert Storm.
Whoa!
I mean, yeah. I mean,
Talk about deep end.
well, I mean, God, yeah. So I went to I had a job out of high school with IBM, and
Okay.
I had taken some college and things like that, and college and I both agreed that college probably wasn't the correct place for me to be. So I ended up getting a job at IBM, and I was comfortable there, but I didn't fit in, because, like I said, I came from this redneck Appalachian place, and now I'm in
Right.
Research Triangle Park in Raleigh-Durham, North Carolina, working in big blue suit and tie, and man, I don't like ties. And I rode a motorcycle back and forth to work all the time, and I usually had particularly crappy days at IBM just because I didn't quite fit in there.
Right.
And on one of these random rides home, I'd kept seeing a recruiter station every day when I rode home from work, and I had just had a particularly crappy day at work one day, and I pulled my bike in and rode into the parking lot, took my helmet off, and they had Army, Navy, Air Force, Marine, and Coast Guard recruiters in the same place. And I walked past the Army office, and I walked past the Navy and the Marine office, and I got to the Air Force. It was all the way in the back, and I was like, "Yeah, this seems right." So I walk in there, and they're like, what can we do for you?" And I was like, I want to get out of here." And they're like, "Well, what do you want to do?" It's like, I don't really care. I want to shoot guns and I want to blow things up.
Nice.
And they're like, "Okay, well, we got a spot for you." And within a couple months, I found myself celebrating Christmas and then my birthday in basic training. And then the next thing you know, I get to Pope. And within a couple weeks, I'm in the middle of Desert Storm. And I'm like, IBM
Wow.
really wasn't that bad.
That is mind blowing, man. And look, we see we've got the whole gang here. Hello, Kevin. Good to see
Kevin,
you, my
Chief,
friend.
Senior Chief Day. What's going on,
Yeah,
man?
absolute honor to have him here. All of you guys, man. This is a mind blowing, in fact. But listen, one thing I wanted to speak to you about, and I mean, I don't know how much you want to go into the history of your military service, but there was a case that I think a few people have heard about where you were guarding something in particular. Can you extrapolate on that?
Yeah. I mean, it's a story I've told a few times. It's kind of the reason that I'm around Chief Day and Gary and Jason and these guys. It was a strange turn of events that got me on the TV show Unidentified with Lou Elizondo.
Yeah.
But the whole thing was this also happened out of Pope Air Force Base. And by this time, I had been serving for this would have been towards the middle of '95, so I would have been in for a good solid 4.5 years by this time.
Right.
And at Pope, we were, like I said, one of the most highly deployed bases, and my unit was the most highly deployed unit in the entire Air Force at the time. And we were very, very used to having a go bag packed at all times. And then you get a phone call or somebody comes knocking on your barracks door and they said, like, "Hey, grab your bag and go, you're getting deployed." And 99 times out of 100, you would grab your bag, you would get on a C-130, the rest of your team would be on the plane, you would take off, and they would fly you around for about an hour and a half. Your flight sergeant would come in and have you dump your bag out on the middle of the airplane floor and count all your gear and make sure you had all your stuff. And then the plane would land and you'd be back where you started, and you'd be back at Pope going, "Well, what the hell was that?" "Well, it's just a readiness training exercise to make sure you got your crap together in
I
case the real
see.
thing happens."
Yeah.
So this happened all the time, right? And the same thing occurred. We got a phone call and, grab your bag, you're getting deployed. And we were like, "Yeah, okay, here we go again." We get on the plane, C-130 out of Pope Air Force Base. We launch, and we didn't get our gear dumped out on the floor of the plane. Nobody was counting our canteens or our chemical patches or anything like that. And it was really kind of quiet and somber feeling inside the plane. And one of the things that I noticed right off the bat is we were not making a turn, because normally they just fly around in a pattern for a while
Sure.
until you come back down, right?
Yeah.
And we weren't making a turn anywhere, and we were heading somewhere. And a couple hours go by, and then we start descending, and we get off the plane, and I'm in Delaware. And I'm like, "What the hell's going on?" And we start transferring to a C5 out of Delaware. And when we got on the C5, nobody was telling us where we were going. We didn't have orders. We didn't have paperwork. We didn't have anything. All that gets processed on the backside of things,
Right.
unless it's just a standard, training or standard routine deployment. But something like this, orders are probably still being typed up somewhere.
Okay.
So we're airborne in the C5 for maybe an hour and a half until they actually tell us that this is a real world deployment and we're going to the country of Jordan. But then they
Wow.
said it's just for an exercise. And I'm like, "Okay, so all of this for an exercise, right?"
Yeah.
So we land in Jordan, and I had been in the desert multiple times by then. Like I said, I started off in Desert Storm, right?
Sure.
So I'd served in Saudi Arabia, I'd served in Kuwait, Taif, Al-Kars, all over the place. And when we get to Jordan, things were just different.
Mm,
There was a feeling in the air that just wasn't it wasn't right.
okay.
And I remember going into the mess hall, chow hall, whatever you guys call it,
Yeah.
and I was looking around and I was taking note of everybody that was there because I only deployed with 9 other people that I knew. Um, and when I'm looking around, I mean, there were hundreds of other Americans that were there. And I was looking at people from the 75th Ranger Battalion. I was looking at people from Naval Special Warfare. I was looking at people, contractors that were wearing FBI uniforms, CIA uniforms. I even saw people from the Department of Energy, the DOE, walking
Whoa.
around. And I'm like, this is not normal at all. And I get sent to a post. I get split apart from my team, which is also something that was very strange to me because if you train with these folks, you know how they react. You know who's going to snore in the foxhole.
Yeah.
You know who's reliable on the weapons. You know what the capabilities of your team members are.
Sure. Yeah.
And we got separated, uh mandatorily separated. So I have no idea where the other 9 guys were. Actually, 8 guys and 1 girl. Um and I get stuck on this post out in the middle of the Jordanian desert. And I mean, there is nothing around. You can't see civilization from horizon to horizon. It's just barren desert with some sand dunes in it.
Right.
And when I get there, the only things that were there was a tent, just like a GP medium canvas type tent. And a few dozen meters off to the right of it was this big ass wooden crate, just a big box in the middle of the desert. And when I mean big, I mean this thing looked like you could drive a car through it or park a car in it, like a Volkswagen Bug could be
Wow.
sealed up inside this crate. So we're not talking like
Okay.
a small little box. It's a big crate. And normally when we get on post and we're told to guard something, we have rules of engagements. Our ROEs are printed out for us. Our special operating procedures are printed out for us. And it tells us what our fields of fire are. It tells us, when to engage, when we're not supposed to engage, challenge words, code words, things like this are all given to us. There was nothing. There was no paperwork. There was nothing there. And I can't remember if the guy was a captain or a major. He comes out and he's giving me and this other guy a briefing of what we're supposed to be doing. And he just says, don't let anybody near the crate and don't get near the crate. That's it. It's like, yeah, don't let anybody near the crate and don't come near the crate. It's like, okay, but what happens if somebody gets near the crate? He's like, shoot them.
Wow.
Like, okay, so this is not an exercise.
Yeah.
And I was a 203 gunner at the time, which is a 40 millimeter grenade launcher on the bottom of an M16 rifle.
Yeah. No.
So I had 240 rounds of 5.56 for my rifle, and I had 18 rounds of high explosive grenades strapped on my vest.
Whoa.
And you don't do that in an exercise either. You may have the grenades, but they're paint grenades with orange tips, and they just go poof. And
Right. Yeah.
they paint they'll leave a big ass bruise, and they'll paint somebody orange and look like a Cheeto, but it's not going to kill them.
No.
So this was obviously not an exercise. And then I was out there for a number of days with this guy, and I don't know who he was. I don't know what base he was from. We barely even talked to each other because we had virtually nothing in common. But we had each other's backs while we were out there, right?
Yeah.
And I used to smoke, and I was a chain smoker. I was 2 packs a day.
Right.
Back at that time. And of course you can't smoke while you're on post, especially on at night, because the little cherry at the end of your cigarette, you can see that on night vision goggles from miles away.
Yeah.
And I didn't really want to get sniped in the middle of the night. And it's not like there was anybody out there, but I mean, these are the things that are going through your head, right?
Of course, you never know, man.
Exactly. So I would walk away from post because there was no supervision. There was nobody else out there. People in the tent were gone. And I would walk out onto the sand dune, and I would lay down on the sand dune, and I would just it was about 300 meters away. and I could still see the crate. And I was up high, so I could see if there was anybody coming around.
Yeah.
And I would just lay there and smoke a cigarette or 2 cigarettes or a handful of cigarettes until I would go back and guard this crate.
Sure.
And it was just one night. The guy that was with me, he smoked as well, so he walked out there with me as well. And I was just super bored, and I grabbed my night vision goggles and I put them on. I strapped them on my head and adjusted them down, and I just kind of laid back on the sand dune, and I was laying pretty much flat on my back, looking straight up through the night vision goggles, just amazed at the amount of stars that you can see, because in the desert at night it is cloudless. There's no atmospheric distortion, there's no pollution out there. It's just crystal clear,
Nice.
all the way to the stars.
Yeah.
When you put the night vision goggles on, you can just see 1,000 times more stars than you can with your naked eye.
Of course. Yeah.
And then I saw something that I thought was just, at first I thought it was an error in the night vision goggles. And I kind of smacked him a little bit, and because sand gets down in the imaging tube and grains of sand will roll around and things like that happen. So I'm looking at the night vision goggles and blowing dust out of them and things like that. And I put them back on, and I'm laying back there and I see it again. And I'm just like, man, this isn't right. And again, I'm flat on my back looking straight up, and all I can see is the cloudless night and the field of stars out there. And then something, it's just a bright pinpoint of light. It comes back from my 6 o'clock position, shoots straight up over top of me, top dead center, makes a perfect 90-degree turn and shoots off to my 9 o'clock.
Whoa.
Now this goes from my rear horizon to my left horizon with a pivot, a turn at the top dead center at 12 o'clock with there was no curve. There was no arc or radius to this turn. It was a perfect 90-degree. And I swear to God, there was no depreciation in speed. It did not slow down. It did not, it was weird. Right.
Yeah.
And I would see this thing over and over again. It was just following the same pattern. So I took the night vision goggles off and I handed them to the guy beside me. And I'm like, here, look at this. And he's like, what am I looking for? I'm like, just look. So he takes the night vision goggles and he puts them on, and he kind of leans back, and it's maybe, I don't know, 30 seconds, a minute or something like that. And the next thing I know, I could see his head track and go left. I was like, yep, you saw it. I swear to God, man, all he does is he takes the night vision goggles off, hands them back to me, reaches into his ammo pouch, pulls out a pack of cigarettes, lights one up, and walks back to the crate.
No way.
He didn't say shit. And he doesn't talk about it the rest of the time. And the bad part is I could not go and ask anybody about what the hell this was, because I had literally walked away from my guard position.
Yeah.
Right. I can't go flag an officer down and say, hey, when I was committing dereliction of duty over here, smoking a cigarette away from post, I think I may have saw something that shouldn't be there.
Yeah.
So I couldn't say anything. I couldn't ask anybody about what the hell it was, but
that's nuts. I'm just going to give a quick shout out to Scott Jensen, but then we've got a good question here. Shout out to my brother in the comments here. Hey, disclosure, bro. Could you determine what shape it was at all?
No, in the night vision goggles, as far away as this thing was, it was literally just a pinpoint of light. To me, it was a circular point that was a couple magnitudes brighter than a star. There was no sound.
No sound either.
And I know for a fact that we were in restricted airspace.
Right.
So there was no aircraft, not
Shouldn't
even
have been there.
jets. No, there was nothing flying. And you could see satellites, and you can see the satellites go over, and you know what a satellite is.
Of course, the movement, the tracking, and things like that. Yeah.
And this would go horizon to horizon with a 90-degree turn, a perfectly executed 90-degree turn to the left, with no depreciation in speed, no arc, no radius, no nothing. And it would go horizon to horizon. This took it under 2 seconds.
That's crazy. So just going back to the crate that you were guarding, do you think there's any correlation between the sighting and the crate?
I do. I didn't at the time, because I didn't really know what was in the crate at the time. It took roughly 24 years to kind of figure out what was truly in the crate. Now, at the time, I had an idea, but I had a wrong idea in the right direction of what was in the crate.
Okay.
When I was looking around, like I was saying, and I saw not only the Ranger Battalion 75th, but the Department of Energy guys
Yeah.
as well. And I had never, ever deployed with the Department of Energy. And like I said, I'd been in the desert for 2.5 years by this time, and I'd never seen the DOE walking around. I knew it had to be something that dealt with something radiological.
Yeah.
It's just the only reason. But I also didn't think of the way I should have been thinking at the time. So in my mind, back then, I thought that what was in the crate was something that was radioactive that we used to help our satellites focus,
Okay.
give our satellites like a ground-based radiological signature that they can track for an exercise.
I
So I
understand.
figured
Yeah.
that it was something sensitive. I just didn't realize how sensitive it actually was. And I
Right.
didn't even know what it was until after I was being vetted by Lou Elizondo and Anthony LePay of the History Channel for the TV show. And they were having me dig up all sorts of proof, documents and things like that, certificates of participation, my DD 214, and
Sure.
I found all the paperwork. I found the retroactive orders, and I gave Lou all of that sort of stuff.
Right.
And then Anthony LePay, who was the showrunner for Unidentified, he wanted to see if I could find anybody that could corroborate anything that I was saying.
Right.
So I put my feelers out, and there was a guy that I had been stationed with at Pope early on, who was not part of this deployment, but I just called him up because I figured that he would help me track down other people that could help corroborate the story. Turns out that he had left Pope, and I can't mention his name because
No problem.
he was interviewed by the TV show, but it did not make the air. They just interviewed him for corroboration,
Sure.
but he refused to go on camera.
Okay.
He basically said that he had been transferred out of Pope, permanent change of station out of Pope, about a year or so after I'd gotten there. And he ended up providing support for SEAL Team 4.
Right.
And
Wow.
ironically, he states that he was on the receiving end of that crate. And so the crate that I was guarding in the desert was eventually picked up and transported by SEAL Team 4 into Egypt.
Wow.
And he was saying that the contents of the crate was actually a recovered nuclear device because, we're talking 4 years previous to this, the Soviet Empire had collapsed.
Yeah.
And there were errant nukes all over the place. I think John Deutsch, the director of Central Intelligence, had even estimated that at one point in time there was over 600 of them that were unaccounted for. And it took them a decade or so to track them all down.
Right.
And this was apparently one of them that had been recovered and was being, we just recovered it. And instead of having a lot of fanfare, you take all the required expertise and all the required talent and you have them nearby, but you
Sure.
put a couple of dumbasses with a couple rifles in a crate in the middle of the desert to guard it, because it's so remote that if somebody starts heading to it, by the time we sound the alarm, everybody else is there.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a great,
So the correlation being the fact that because this was a stolen nuke, it had apparently been stripped of all of its shielding because they were
Wow.
transporting it in an old ass truck across the desert coming out of, one of the fallen states. I think it was coming out of Georgia or something like that.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
And, they're going through the desert. So to conserve fuel and everything, they strip off all the shielding on this thing to conserve weight. And so this thing's glowing. And it's probably emitting enough radiation that if there is a correlation between UAP and nuclear devices, now there's this gamma emission coming from the middle of the desert that never had a gamma emission before. So I can only assume that the UAP are like, what's this?
I can imagine it's just like beaming up there, like out of the middle of nowhere. Just, wow. That's mind blowing, man.
And the reason that I say that I know that it was hot radioactive is because, the the major or the captain or whoever. He was basically like, don't get near the crate.
Yeah.
And of course, I don't listen to him. And I stood on the crate. I laid down on the crate.
Oh.
I pissed on the crate. 9 years ago, almost to the day, 9 years ago, I was diagnosed with a very, very specific type of skin cancer that is
Whoa.
only caused by exposure to radiation. And it was on my inner thigh. And I do not sunbathe in the nude. So
Wow.
now I've had it taken care of. It's
Yeah.
not gone, but I mean, it's not come back. It's gone. But
Good. Glad to hear. Glad to hear.
it's, to me, that's the correlative event that kind of has proof positive that I was sitting on something that I should not have been sitting on.
Whoa, that's insane, man. Damn. But then I guess you weren't told at the time, so of course you didn't know. You just said don't go near it. Well, young and stupid. No
And
offense.
the VA, the Veterans Administration, has also denied my claim on that. They claim it was not service connected because I have no proof
Of course.
of anything that was in the crate.
Damn.
I mean, hell, it took John McCain going for to help Mr. Burroughs from the Rendlesham accident.
Of
I mean,
course.
the VA has a long history of this crap. So
Yeah, big time.
Because it's gone, had it surgically removed, I'm not worried about it at this point. So there's no reason to try to fight the VA over something that's not happened at the moment.
Amazing. Thank you so much for going into so much detail on that story, because I was aware of it, but that's like a lot of people in the comments are saying it's like something from a movie script. That's amazing.
People take me to task and they say there's no way that the U.S. government would ever leave a nuclear weapon under guard by two low-ranking individuals in the middle of the desert. But you got to remember, within just minutes behind me are the 75th Ranger Battalion, the Department of Energy, the FBI, the CIA. If something goes south, it's not like they can go anywhere with this crate.
Yeah.
You would have to have a crane. You would have to have some sort of tracked vehicle to get it out of where it was. It was pretty damn secure.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it makes sense to me. I mean, what do I know really? But it does. It all correlates. So after your time there and in the Air Force in general, where is the transition between that and getting involved with UAP, the O.S.I.R.I.S project and that? Where's the connection?
I got a divorce in 2017, and it was kind of a shitty one. And I spent a significant amount of time having a pity party for myself. And there was one night where it was probably 2-3 o'clock in the morning. I was feeling particularly crappy about my general situation. And I was sitting on my sofa. I flipped on the TV and pulled up Hulu, I think it was, or some streaming service. And I watched a random episode of the Unidentified TV show. And I was like, damn, I think they were talking about the relationship between nukes and UAP.
Sure.
Or they touched on it or something. I don't even remember what episode it was. So I jump up and I go to Reddit and I write this big, long story on Reddit. And I don't do it in a UFO forum. I actually did it in a veterans forum, because remember I said that the guy that was with me, I had no idea who he was.
Yeah.
Right. I still don't. I went to a veterans forum, told the story, and was hoping that some of the detectives, the internet detectives on Reddit, could help track down the guy that I was stationed with or assigned with on that post. And people kept asking for more detail and more detail and more detail. So finally I kind of said why and what was going on, but I left it very vague. And they were like, hey, you might want to post this in the UFO subreddits. And I was like, the UFO subreddits, really?
Oh God.
But I did. I basically cut and pasted it and went over to the UFO subreddits. And then all of a sudden people were like, oh man, you got to contact TTSA. I'm like, what the hell is TTSA? I'd never heard of this before. And they're like, oh yeah, they're doing this show Unidentified. I'm like, well, that's the show that I watched. And they told me that there's an email address that pops up at the very end of the show where they're asking for military people to come forward with their story.
Yeah.
So I go back, I hit pause, I copy down the email address, and then I take a cut and pasted version of everything that I'd put on Reddit and I send it to that email address. And nothing happens for maybe 6 to 8 weeks. was just radio silence.
Yeah.
And then out of the blue, I get a phone call from, I think it was Jessica Phillips, which is one of the executive producers of the show.
Right.
And she's like, Mr. McGowan, we really enjoy your story. Lou Elizondo wanted me to reach out to you and ask if you would be willing to talk about this on camera. And I'm like, who? I had no idea, because I had only watched that one episode
Yeah.
of the first season. I kind of vaguely remembered who Lou was, but
Yeah.
and I was like, well, if you guys can do me a favor, the only reason that I'm even here is because I want to find the guy that I was with so he can validate my story and validate my memory. So since you guys are a giant TV show and have all this production capability, if you can track him down, I'll tell my story. And they were
Fair
like,
enough.
oh, yeah, we can do that. Absolutely. We can we've got some of the best researchers, blah, 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 blah. I mean, it's so much smoke being blown up my butt at that point in time. I mean, my gut was barbecued. But so it wasn't until I walked in, they flew me to New York. Their studios for A&E were in New York, and they flew me up to New York. And it wasn't until I actually sat down in the chair in front of Lou that I had decided to tell my story, because they still had not honored their half of the deal.
Right.
But when I was sitting there and Lou was talking to me, and I think the cameraman's name was Matt Thompson, I think. Forgive me if I got that wrong. But they didn't laugh. They didn't snicker. They didn't make me feel stupid or dumb or awkward or anything. They actually took everything that I was saying very seriously.
Yeah.
And this was even off camera. And then they're like, you're okay with telling the story on camera? And I was like, sure. And, I kind of lied to them all the way up to the point where I get to New York, because they were like counting on me telling the story. And in the back of my head, I was like, I'll probably walk away from this at the very last minute.
Right.
But Lou and Matt had put me at so much at ease that I was able to tell the story. And that's everything since then has got me to here.
That's incredible. Absolutely incredible. I remember the show that you were featured in. I mean, I've followed you ever since and seen what you've been doing with the O.S.I.R.I.S projects and now UAPX. So I guess finishing that TV show, the O.S.I.R.I.S project wasn't anything, it wasn't in your mind, or was that something then that you just started thinking, I want to do something in this field? And
no, after I finished the TV show, there was a guy, well, Ryan Sprague had reached out to me, Somewhere in the Skies podcast.
Yep.
Right? That's it. Yeah.
Yep, that's it.
He had reached out to me, and he wanted to do an interview for me. And of course, I was still under NDA with the History Channel. So I contacted the PR people at their History Channel. They're like, oh yeah, we know Ryan. It's okay. You can go ahead and do that podcast. So I go on his podcast, and the next thing I know, I'm getting requests like every 15 minutes. Hey, come on my podcast. Come on my podcast. Like, what the fuck is a podcast? I had no idea. I'd done Ryan's, and I didn't know this was an actual thing, right?
Right.
Because I wasn't a UFO guy. I had maybe read a couple books when I was a kid. I watched Close Encounters of the Third Kind. I had this one event that I witnessed, but by and large, for the most part, I was just like, okay, something weird happened, and move on with the rest of my life. And then all of a sudden, people are asking me to come on their show. And it just snowballed from there. And then I get a call from a guy by the name of Andrew Hall, who was doing a podcast called Dead Hand Radio.
Okay.
And he lives here in Las Vegas. So I met him face to face first, and then I agreed to go on his podcast. And then during the podcast, he had asked me what I thought ufology needed. And I just word vomited at the time. And I said, I think that it needs standardization of data collection so that everybody's collecting data the exact same way, right? So there's no disparities in cameras, and people can't McWestify you just because of your technology that you're using or things like that. If there was a protocol, if there was a procedure, let's standardize it. And Andrew said, well, have you heard of Skyhub? I was like, no, I have no idea what Skyhub is. So he's telling me about Skyhub, but at the same time, I've got a dual monitor set up here, right?
Right.
So while I'm on his podcast, I go over to my other monitor and I start Googling what Skyhub is as he's talking about it. I'm like, this is the coolest thing ever. I can build this thing. I can put it in my backyard. It does all the searching and uploads the data. And so I start going to Amazon and I start ordering the parts for it and everything. And I think by the end of the week, the parts had started coming in and I had started building my own SkyHub unit.
Wow.
And then I think it was probably maybe 3/4 of the way through the build, I realized I'm in Las Vegas. This is literally the brightest city in the world. How good is my SkyHub going to operate being in the backyard if, the Luxor light's coming down on the top of this thing?
Yeah.
So I was like, man, this thing should be mobile. I need to get it out in the middle of the desert. So I started looking at ways to, put solar panels on it or attach car batteries to it. And it just became bulky and heavy and huge and unwieldy. And I'm like, nah, I'm going to put it on wheels.
Hell yeah.
So my daily driver was the O.S.I.R.I.S. My car that I was driving every single day was this 1999 Land Rover Discovery 2 that was getting me from point A to point B. And I walk outside and I just start drilling holes in my roof and running Ethernet cable through the side walls and tearing up the carpet and running antenna lines through it. And I'm like, I'm putting a SkyHub in this thing. And that's, it got there. And I stepped back and I looked at it and I'm like, needs more. And it just hasn't stopped, man.
No, it hasn't. I've been keeping my eye on it and it just seems to have like a new sensor array every time I look at it or something. Yeah. I mean, it's absolutely incredible. And I've seen videos with you driving it and so we can see the interior and just how much stuff's in there. I mean, it's incredible. It's very impressive. So
oh yeah. And if Gary's still listening, he has called me out so many times because this vehicle is literally built to conquer some of the most amazingly rough terrain in the world. I would pit a 1990s Land Rover up against a Jeep any day of the week. Right?
Wow.
They're just indestructible vehicles. But mine is 22 years old. And I've had this thing airborne. I've bounced the front end up off the ground. I've been driving on one wheel down the sides of mountains and Gary's like, stop. You're gonna break it. So, and yeah, you see his comment down there at the bottom.
Oh, I missed it. Hold on one sec.
He says, I drive like a blind monk.
Oh man. Listen, obviously I've got it here in the background, but if you just hang on one second.
So I've had to tone it down. I've had to, yeah, there she is. There she sits. And that's even before I've gotten the other camera mounted on the top. That's an older photo. So there's another giant camera that goes right beside that weather station now.
Wow.
And
so how successful has it been?
Well, so that's a trick question.
Well, I genuinely don't know any of the data that you've got from it, to be honest. So yeah. I'm not trying to put you on the spot in any.
No. I've done some things locally around here in Vegas, and here's the catch with all the sensor tech and everything on there. I can put this together, and I'm the dumb guy who can turn a steering wheel, but I'm not the smart guy who can interpret the data.
Right.
So the data that I collect and catch has to be reviewed by somebody who understands what that data means.
Okay.
So, it's like being back in the military when some analyst somewhere is doing the target acquisition for me and I'm just the idiot pulling the trigger. So what it has caught yet, I don't know. And it's not built for me to have instant recognition on anything.
Sure.
The data is recorded. Yeah. It'll get downloaded. It'll get saved. It'll get copied multiple times, and then it'll get sent to folks much smarter than I am to be able to analyze it and come back to me and say, hey, this is anomalous, or hey, you just caught a monarch.
Right. I mean, that's fair enough. I'm glad you said that because at least you've got the data though.
Yes.
And I'd imagine there's quite a lot of it as well. So
yes. I mean, I've got stacks of hard drives just sitting around me here. There's a 8 terabyte hard drive right off to my right. There's 2 4 terabyte hard drives. So every time I hop in the vehicle and go somewhere, these will get wiped and they'll because all the data gets uploaded to the cloud. So it gets stored in the cloud, and then I'll take a fresh drive and go out and plug it in and see what I catch.
Amazing. So I guess, I mean, how long have you been doing that with the O.S.I.R.I.S? And is it quite a few years or
No, God, no. I've only been doing it for a year,
what is?
less than a year.
Wow, it seems that it's just developed and become
Yeah.
something newer and newer, but all in that short amount of time. Now, I mean, that's impressive, I have to say.
Well, it's like
So,
getting a tattoo, man. You can't just get one, right?
no.
They're exactly, they're addictive. So, the tattoos are like cameras for the car. I put one camera on it and I'm like, well, I need to have this extra capability. And, this thing sitting right behind me right here is a test for some new tech that I'm putting on.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
so this is running right now, giving me a baseline on some frequencies that I'm planning on scanning the next time I'm out in the field. But
Right.
I'm developing the baseline so I know what's an abnormal event characteristic, what that looks like, so I can be able to hit those peaks and valleys in the frequencies that I'm looking at. So
Right.
this is going to be another thing that you're going to see on the O.S.I.R.I.S very soon is a directional LPDA antenna that's going to be on a mount that is going to be constantly sweeping back and forth 180 degrees, mounted on the front of the vehicle. And then when it hits a signal, I can stop it and then use pitch and elevation to try to directionally range and find where the source of that signal is coming from.
Wow. Nice. So, and then I guess this is a natural progression to you becoming part of the team with UAP Expedition. So, can you just tell us about how that came about? And I mean, obviously, were you friends with these guys before it
No,
happened?
no.
How did so they,
I mean, obviously, everybody knows Chief Day.
yeah,
Everybody knows Gary and Jason. These are the guys, from the Princeton, from the
yeah,
Nimitz, and they are the reason that most of us are in this career field. Not a career field. We don't get paid for it, but in this research field, I guess,
yeah,
is because they had the cojones to come out and tell their story. Um, and Chief Day and Gary put UAPX together, and that was, God, I don't even know what year that actually happened, but I had absolutely nothing to do with it.
right,
Um, and to be honest, to be brutally honest, the way that I got involved with it is through somebody in Hollywood that called me up and said, "Hey, we want to do a production." And I'm like, well, they didn't call me, actually. They called Skyhub. They were talking to
right,
Skyhub, and then I got recommended to them through Skyhub, and then I got hooked up with UAPX. And I guess Gary had been watching me and the O.S.I.R.I.S for a little bit, and he was like, "Well, I guess I'll take a risk on this asshole from the Air Force and see if he's worth a hoot, and we'll give him a shirt and a hat and make him feel at home and see if he screws up from there."
Hey, it looks like you've been doing some good work. I mean, I haven't seen the work, obviously, but you've been out there. We've seen all the photos of the crew together, and I think
Yeah.
a lot of people are very excited to see what's coming. And like I said, I've been following you, so I know that at this point, I can't really ask any questions about what you guys have been up to or what you may
Right.
have possibly captured. I think that's something we all have to look forward to in the future. So I
I,
won't go there.
I want to explain as best as I can without violating anything as to
Okay,
why we can't talk about it.
please
Because
do. Yeah.
one of the promises that I made at the very onset of building the O.S.I.R.I.S is that I was going to give my data to the public without any restriction whatsoever.
Sure.
And this is not my data.
No.
That's why this is different. When this is paid for by a third party, we are required to abide by their covenants and restrictions.
Yeah.
But when we go out and we do our own thing, then the data becomes public information immediately. But in this case, secondary to the fact that we're not allowed to talk about it yet, is the fact that this is, in my understanding, the first, if not one of the first times humanity has ever put together a team like this to study this in such intricate scientific detail.
Yeah.
And because of that, we are getting, or we have, quantum physicists, astrophysicists on the team who are currently reviewing all the data, and it's going to go through the entire peer review process. It's going to go through the
Nice.
publication process. Everything is going to be handled in a way that eliminates the abilities for people to say, well, you didn't check this or you didn't check that, or that's a seagull. This is going to be strict adherence to the scientific process, the scientific method, and it's going to be it's going to change the approach. And we don't want to just throw out terabytes of information without any context to them, because it
Yeah.
won't make any sense.
No, not
So
at all.
we have to have our scientists and our physicists analyze the information to be able to tell the whole story. Because, just one, even we get fuzzy, blurry blob videos. We do. But when we give the other portions of the data along with that fuzzy, blurry blob video, the nonsensical blob now has a story behind it.
Sure. Yeah.
So you're
That's what
not
we need.
asking people for faith in belief that this is a UAP, or that this was an airplane, or that this was a bug. We're not asking for their faith in those statements. We're going to say at some point in time that we captured this, and these other 10 pieces of information validate that this was a moth, or that this was an airplane, or that
Yeah.
this is, whatever it is.
Yeah. That's amazing. I'm so excited. I think it's time that we step away from waiting for the government and things like that, and to have these civilian institutions and companies doing exactly what you guys are doing right now. So I tip my hat to you. I think it's incredible, and I cannot wait for the future. And I hope other people get inspired by what you're doing as well.
It's not me. I am not an individual that's doing this. This is UAPX. This is, Senior Chief Day this was his baby. Jason and Gary Gary and Jason in that order are the helmsmen of this thing.
Yeah.
And without them, this shirt wouldn't be on me, and we wouldn't be doing this. So it's it takes disparate different types of sensors to paint the picture, and it takes disparate different types of people to make the team.
Yeah, no, but listen, I'm giving you a shout out personally, because you did your thing with the O.S.I.R.I.S. They saw the quality in you. They brought you onto their team. So, you must have been doing something right. So I appreciate you obviously being humble there. That's all good. But listen, I just mentioned talking about the government. So let's just switch it over to that side of things and the current state of what's happening with the UAPTF, the preliminary assessment we saw in June 25th, and then the announcement yesterday about the upcoming bill where we're going to have this rollover 90-day reporting, into the Congress and stuff. So how do you see everything at the moment when it comes to that angle of the subject?
I think I can understand why people become ecstatic and happy about the progress that they're seeing occur, because, to be honest and to be truthful about this is more forward momentum and forward progress from the government that we've had since the close of Project Blue Book. It just, this is the reset button on that.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I am a consummate pragmatist, and I don't trust that we will ever see the information that is gathered by the government from the government.
Sure.
And that's why that I think that organizations like UAPX, like the Galileo Project, like SkyHub, like all these other groups that are out there collecting this information and this data, the technology that SkyHub uses is virtually the same technology that the United States government would have used 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And 20 years ago is when all this crap happened. So we have the tech, we have the sensors, we have the ability to replicate what was done 20 years ago. So now the civilian population may actually have a chance to go out and do what we could not have done. And we can get the information that we're never going to get from the government.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. Now I'm just going to bring this up. We've actually got a surprise guest who's just jumped in. So I'm going to bring him in. So don't look so worried. Please welcome Mr. Gary Voorhees.
Oh,
hey,
there he is.
Rolled on to steal your thunder, brother.
Hoorah. Anytime, man. Anytime.
Neighborhood hope dealer on his way in.
Gary, thank you so much for jumping in, man. I saw you in the comments. I thought, let's just bring you in. We are speaking in a few days or some point in the week, but hey.
Yeah, I won't stay too long. I figured I'd come in, bust somebody's chops a little bit, and
It's
roll
all
out.
good, man. We'd like Jason to jump in as well, but I think he's obviously busy hosing down his yard or whatever he was doing. So
He's
it's all good.
pressure washing his
Hey,
deck.
look, he's still here. Jason. But no, thank you. Yeah, so we were just talking, Gary, about the current state of things when it comes to looking at it from the government aspect. Have you got any opinions on that and what we're seeing at the moment?
You want me to be completely frank, or you want me to be political? All right, fuck the government. We'll go get our own data.
Hey, that's what I wanted to hear, bro. Absolutely. And that's why I appreciate exactly what you guys are doing. And I say this to my followers all the time, my colleagues all the time, across all of my social media platforms, is that disclosure is going to come from people like us, you guys, who we can share the data out from the information that you guys gather and collect.
Yeah.
So,
well, the day they come out and, they actually, without any strings attached, come out and help us. That's when I'll be like, I'm not going to scratch the government, but I mean, when it comes down to it, you can't fight them. So, and they're not going to give you what we want. So we might as well try to figure it out ourselves. Yep. With the advent of adding Jeremy to our team, gave us a very mobile aspect to our research, which is if he can keep the thing freaking running. But it's been such a pleasure having him, and don't think that it's all been rainbows and sugar. He's a pain in my ass, but
of course,
that's what I want. I want people that think for themselves.
Yeah,
I would rather have him ask me for forgiveness 100 times than not try anything by himself. Because I mean, everybody on my team has got a different personality, a different specialty, a different aspect. He's a coddly chair force guy. We're super comfy Navy guys. Me, Jason, and Senior Chief, and then we've got a Hollywood type on our team that's super interested. And then we've got an ex-lawyer that's now a paranormal lawyer. Takes up for in his retirement, takes up for all the weird stuff, and
we've even got an astronaut.
Yeah, we've got one of the only civilian NASA trained astronauts, and he's also a science. He hasn't got his PhD yet, but you know what? He's still a scientist. But we've got such a ragtag team of just basically, I have no problem stepping in and picking up anybody that's worth a damn that can contribute. But I also want to keep my team tight.
Yeah,
small. I even got shit for bringing Jeremy on board. So, but
I'm kind of known as a divisive personality in certain circles.
Yeah, he's a pain in the ass. He likes to do his own thing, but that's fine with me.
Hey, it's exciting, man. I'm telling you, from someone on the outside that's seen all this develop over the past few months, man. I'm excited personally.
Well, let me fill you in on a couple of things. I thank you, Jeremy, for being very tiptoeish around our current project.
Sure.
So we are under NDA on our current project.
Yeah.
But it's obviously out there that we did do our first expedition.
Yes.
So, and we have, and the movie website's up. So it's obvious that we're doing a movie about it. So once all the NDA's done, the premiere's done, and everything's, our scientists have a chance to write up their white paper on our data, we will be giving everything, the raw enchilada, all of the data out to anybody that wants it. Now, I will warn you, it is quite a bit of data, so we are going to be looking into, I'm going to be reaching out to certain people in the community that tend to hub large amounts of information to try to disseminate this as efficiently as possible, because, this is going to be like back when you were, yes, baby girl. You want to play the Ryan game? All right. I got to make fun of my friend for a little while, and then I'll let you play your Ryan game. Hey, no screaming. Hey, there's real life for you,
bro. It's exactly like my life. Don't you worry about that.
Yeah. So we are going to disseminate all of our data. It is eventually going to get to the public, everything, the raw data, all of it. Nothing's going to be held back. Nothing's going to be like, oh, this is too good. And at midnight on Tuesday, I will be releasing and dropping more information on everybody. No. By the way, go check my Patreon. No. No, we ask for nothing in return. Because we're going to continue to do this regardless of whether we get money to do it or not, as we are all broke. I'm soon to be, honestly jobless. I know Jeremy's currently looking for another job, so we do this all out of pocket. So that's why we had to take opportunities like this, this documentary that they wanted to film about our company. So
yeah.
If a production company wants to foot the bill to pay for actual science, we're not going to say no.
I know, you'd be stupid.
Well, I will say, and Gary, throw a flag up if I'm saying too much, but I will say,
all right, stop.
During this whole production event, there were a lot of concerns that we were going to be portrayed as something that we're not, and
really?
we almost walked off the production twice because we did not think that.
Well,
to be fair,
Jeremy, though, when you've got, when you got people that aren't used to dealing with real science, but they still have a production to do. As I'll be honest with you, I'm going to tell everybody, look, our science is effing boring. It is horrible. I mean, only like 10% of the hardcore UFO guys would stare there and watch every grain to look for anything, So when you're trying to appeal to a larger audience, they've got a hard task of taking our boring science and creating something interesting out of it. Yeah. So take that as a caveat when you finally see this film, because I think it's going to be pretty amazing, because there's been synchronicity out the wazoo doing this whole project. Nice. 2 years ago, actually it's been 2.5 years ago when we started UAPX, everything was just a theory on paper. Hey, what are we going to do about this? How can we do this? Oh, what have you got? Well, let's figure out a way to use that. Let's utilize this. And then, it was just a lot of big dreams. And then, here comes this production. It's like, we'll put you up in this spot. You do your science. And it's like, we already have the equipment. We already have the personnel. There we go. We're good to go. Let's do this.
And we did not get a paycheck from this. They just paid for our ability to go do this. Yeah. None of us drew it.
I was trying to think if I got any money. No, we got like per diem, like to eat during the day, that type of stuff.
They paid for our expenses and they bought us our food.
They did pay for our scientists, though. Full disclosure, they paid for our scientists, but these guys, they are PhDs. I'm not. I'm just a freaking washed up cable guy from Florida that happened to be in the right place at the right time. But people like me, Jeremy, the rest of the guys, none of us got paid to do this. Basically, the only payments that were ever made were to a university to legitimize everything so that we can actually go do it as a real scientific expedition. So we're coming through NYU, and, scientists have to be paid. I don't care what you say. You want a scientist to do good work, you pay them.
Exactly. Absolutely. And I will say, since UAPX came on my radar, I've been talking about it across my socials, and people are really excited, man. They really are fed up of hearing or waiting for things to come out of government entities or agencies or the military. And this is what we've been waiting for. Yes, we've seen the Galileo project come up, and that's incredible. I spoke to Avi Loeb last week. Really great stuff. But this is that raw stuff. This is raw. What you guys doing, I think, is.
Speaking of Avi, though, looking at his project, at first I was like, kind of like, oh no, don't start from scratch. We've got all this great info, but when you got to think about going into a field that's literally, there's only a handful of us that are really actually doing science in this field.
Yeah.
I don't blame them for wanting to start with a foundation. Without that solid foundation, you can't build up further. For us, like our first expedition was a lot of trial and error because we didn't know what equipment would work. We didn't know what correlations were going to match. We didn't know if we didn't even know half of the stuff that we ended up finding or not finding, or, we were just amazed by how much can go wrong.
Yeah. And listen, Gary, what I will say is
down to power failures in the middle of something occurring, things just go.
Let's
Yeah.
save some of this for our conversation in the week, Gary, because
Believe me, you have
that'd be
no problem
awesome.
with that. I have plenty to say about
Oh, I
everything
can't
under the
wait,
sun, from permaculture to, if you want to talk about, zip ties, I don't care. We
all
got,
of it.
I
All
can
of
make
it,
everything
man.
sound interesting.
Hell
But
yeah.
I'm going to go ahead and hop off here. Hey, thanks for having me on,
Hey,
and
we'll
I'll
speak in
see
a
you
few
in a
days.
couple weeks.
Yeah.
Hey, keep making us look good, Jeremy.
Hoorah.
Thanks, Gary. Awesome. That was nice. So, Jeremy, I'm going to throw it back at you, jumping on that Sky-Hub thing, because one thing that everyone keeps saying to me is that I should do Sky-Hub, or how can they do Sky-Hub? Because to them, it sounds like it doesn't sound easy, but I think it is just a case of getting your head down,
it's plug and play. The work is already done.
Right.
And a caveat, Sky-Hub will never be done. They are constantly improving. They're constantly rewriting the code. They're constantly updating the capabilities and the abilities of the equipment. But in a nutshell, what they have is they have a recipe of pieces and parts that you can go on Amazon and purchase yourself. Then they have a set of instructions that says, how to slide tab A into slot B, and how to download the software and how to make it run. And if you can if you can assemble IKEA furniture, you can build a Sky-Hub.
Wow.
Because the instructions are actually easier from Sky-Hub. IKEA is just pictures.
There you go.
So, and you don't need to know how to solder. You don't need to know how to do anything special. I built mine right here on this desk. And I've tinkered with electronics in the past, but you put 3 different types of resistors in front of me and I wouldn't know the difference. And I didn't need to. So assembling a Sky-Hub is extremely easy. It's budget dependent. They have several different ways that you can approach this depending on how much you want to put into it. And I bought, because I'm just that kind of guy. I bought the creme de la creme of the processor, and then I bought the shitty sensors to go around it, knowing that I could upgrade and use the same processor in the future.
I like it. Yeah, it's like a bit like building a PC for anybody that's done that. Like
it's exactly like building a PC, except this one does weird things.
I love it. I love it. So, I mean, all I was really going to end off with was what's next, but I think we're kind of clear on that to a degree, aren't we? It's the UATX, and
what's next is not stopping. I mean, this, like Gary said, we're in not so many words, we're never getting what we want to get from the government. Disclosure, Luis Elizondo is constantly saying disclosure is a process. Well, yes, it is a process if you're waiting on information from the government, but it doesn't have to be a long process. Like I said, right now, today, we have access to the same sensor tech as a civilian that the government was using 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And 20 years ago is when all of this stuff started breaking loose. So with our ability to go on Alibaba or Amazon or eBay, we can build the same technology that was in use 20 years ago and get the same data from 20 years ago and not have to wait another 70 years for disclosure to actually happen.
Amen to that, man. And that's what I wanted to hear, because I've done quite a bit of research into Sky-Hub. I mean, to be honest, I just don't have the time to do it. I'd like to think I'll get around to it one day. But for everyone that always emails me and DMs me saying, should I do Sky-Hub? What do you think? This is what we needed to hear. It is as simple as we hoped it would be. So there's no excuses anymore. If it's something you want to do, let's do it, or you do it. And
well, I tell you what everybody should do. Anybody who wants to order a Sky-Hub, go to their website, look at the shopping list, find the second most expensive thing on the shopping list and buy it. And then have it sit on your desk. And know that there's one more thing above that price range that you have to save for, but everything else is under that price range and you should be able to get it. And just have that second most expensive thing staring at you on the desk until you get off your ass and finish building.
I like that. That is awesome. That's a good way of looking at it, man, because it'll just force you to keep going and building it up. So yeah. Well, listen, Jeremy, thank you so much for talking to me. And listen, I think it's only right that you come back on in the future, maybe when Gary's on and Jason's on and stuff like that, because I love the banter between you guys. You obviously vibe off each other, and that's just a beautiful
Absolutely.
thing to see, man. So you really
Absolutely.
are welcome here anytime.
Well, hey, I appreciate it. This has been an absolute pleasure. It's been a while since I've been on a podcast because, we were under a little bit of a moratorium there, but things are loosening up. So I've got a little bit more access now.
Hey, well, that's great, man. So stay in touch. And if you hang about, and we'll have a chat off screen in a minute.
Absolutely.
That'd be great. So, yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, man. Guys, thank you so much to everyone that's been watching live tonight. This has been one of my favorite interviews in a long time. No offense to everybody else that I've interviewed, but this was just hanging out and talking and no pressure. And it was fun. This is what we want. We talk about serious subjects, but we can still have fun and just be normal human beings about it. And I think we got that tonight. So thank you, everyone, for watching. Thank you to Jeremy. You can catch me, guys, in the week with more stuff. Just head over to my Instagram to see, when I announce things. If you did want to carry on this conversation, guys, I'll probably jump on Instagram live in about 10 minutes, so you can join me there. But for now, thank you so much for watching. Take care, guys, and I'll see you on the next one. Peace.